Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be your host this evening. On the warning chart here, nothing going on North Gulf Coast, interior, but there are some winter storm watches out for winter storm conditions. Just came out this afternoon here for the mid Yukon Valley, the Delta there, and up along the Norton Sound coastline, all the way to St. Lawrence Island, on up into the Bering Strait. This is for the next storm coming up, and the snow and blowing snow that may develop up in these areas. These are in effect from tomorrow morning through Monday night. And moving on to the satellite imagery, here is the next frontal system coming northward, bringing about half an inch of rain to Kodiak Island. So this system with the low pressure just south of the Alaska Peninsula, more of a wind than rain producer, with storm force and gale force winds across the North Gulf Coast, with the storms mostly through the Barren Islands on in toward Kamishak Bay, and then those becoming northeasterly with speeds 35 to 50 miles an hour here back along the Alaska Peninsula, and rain, which fell as a wet snow here over the eastern Aleutians and Alaska. Not bad up over the Pribilofs. You can see a pretty fair stretch there from St. Matthew Island all the way down to St. George, and winds were light and the skies variably cloudy. Kind of a cold day out over the Aleutians, temperatures in the 20s there. And this front, something of a little bit of a wave here, but this moving up, gale force winds in the North Gulf Coast now, rain beginning at Cordova this afternoon with east winds up to about 30 miles an hour. Rain and snow in across Prince William Sound, areas of rain and snow. But again, not a lot of moisture with this front as it comes northward. And a little bit of rainfall showing up this afternoon just off the southeast coast there, but most inland locations were dry. And then an old boundary doesn't really show up too well here on the imagery. Right in through this area, kind of splitting up. Brought some areas of light snow today to the Arctic coast there. Winds were not all that brisk on the east side. Point Lay still gusting up to about 30 miles an hour. That cold fetch of wind still coming through the Bering Strait, up to 45 miles an hour at Tin City, and about 30 miles an hour here over at Gamble, with Savunga seeing significantly less wind and putting the whole thing in motion again. You can see a little bit of a break here between the storms, between the one shifting to the north and this one swinging up from the south here, occurring over the interior. So not a bad day here through the central interior areas. On the chart this morning at 9 a.m., this is the position roughly of the front as it was pushing northward. Coming across Kodiak Island there, rain tapering off this afternoon. Again, just 0.4 of an inch falling there. And Seward only picking up about 1/10 of an inch. Same thing at Cordova, although the rain didn't begin until mid-afternoon over in these locations. And a very weak trough here coming inland. A few flurries with that, nothing significant at all. A weak low up there near Kivalina. Stronger one, this system here, actually the one that cut across Bristol Bay on Friday and brought the strong winds into a lot of the state on Friday and Friday night. now back in the Bering Sea here and continuing to weaken. This is the next low center, still a ways to the south, so the front pushing out quite a ways to the north. Another front developing down in this area, and we'll see that'll be coming up to about here tonight, with the original front slowly edging its way eastward along the North Gulf Coast. Pretty dry conditions, really. Just some light flurries may only make it up to the Alaska Range, and nothing beyond. The boundary just kind of sliding aloft without producing much in the way of any precipitation at all up there. Mostly back through this area. Southeast winds, I don't think there'll be enough snow falling here to produce any significant blowing snow, maybe a little bit of drifting stuff. That's about it, still with the strong winds. And those winds should pick up now over the Pribilofs probably after midnight tonight as that front edges its way back to the west here, and some moisture gets in, probably back to some blowing snow stuff there. About the same, no change from today here for the eastern Aleutians. Temperatures may fall below freezing, which would make for a drier snow, but rain, wind here from the Alaska Peninsula. Another trough, probably bring another batch into Kodiak tonight, and some light rain, fog, and drizzle all along the southeast coast. Should work its way a little farther inland overnight tonight, but and then something of a mix possibly going on over the northern areas, but pretty light precipitation wise. So fair conditions up over the Koyukuk Valley, the Yukon, Brooks Range of the Arctic coast. Still a little breezy on the west side there, but most of that moisture should shift off the coast there and be done. And then another batch comes up on Monday, tomorrow, here, mostly over the western areas. And again, this warm front dry off to the east there. So just some clouds associated with that, and dry over the eastern interior. So I have this front now stuck across, well, from northwest to southeast across south central Alaska. Here, maybe the Susitna Valley. So periods of light snow or rain and snow mixed here. Mostly rain down along the North Gulf Coast, and it's stalled out here. Could be a fairly pretty good 24-hour amount coming up, an inch or more right along the coastline here into western Prince William Sound. But kind of a wave down in this area should spread some more moisture back into the panhandle during the afternoon hours. Probably will kick the winds up as well in this tighter gradient, but drier conditions up to the north. Rain and snow, probably rain down at sea level here across the Kodiak Island areas, Bristol Bay, and then back into the snow areas of snow here across the southwest interior with this low center up into the Bering Sea now. So some pretty gusty winds, anywhere from 30 to 50 miles an hour occurring here. Bristol Bay, King Salmon, up along the western Alaska Range. Less wind here over south central Alaska. This front nowhere as strong as the one that came in Friday. So winds will be pretty minimal with that, although still be some fairly turbulent areas. But out here over the Bering Sea, northwest winds and numerous snow showers from the eastern Aleutians up across the Pribilofs. Snow and blowing snow likely here for the St. Lawrence Island areas back to the northwest coast. And again, that possibly could develop here tomorrow over the Yukon Delta areas and up across Norton Sound if enough snow accompanies this system moves into the area there. So that's why it's a watch right now as opposed to a warning. And for Tuesday, we end up with a low pressure area just southwest of St. Lawrence Island there, and several troughs rotating around that center, more or less at a tangent to the wind flow, bringing surges of snow and blowing snow across Norton Sound, catching the coast. Another band comes into the Kuskokwim Bay, Nunivak Island areas, and yet another one probably extend far enough south to bring some snow showers into St. Paul. Scattered snow showers over the southwest interior. Again, that mixed condition. Still have a frontal boundary, a weak frontal boundary here, northwest to southeast. So pretty wet along the North Gulf Coast, and just areas of light rain or rain and snow mixed over south central Alaska. Very light and a fair day coming up here over the interior. Looks like those winds through the passes of the eastern Alaska Range probably picking back up to, I'll say 40 miles an hour there, like Delta Junction, for example, on over toward Healy with the orientation of the gradient here. Lots of moisture bringing or keeping the southeast coast pretty wet, except for maybe the extreme southern areas may escape the rain altogether, but Yakutat will be right back into it. And then notice the fair skies coming up, light winds, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island looking really good on Tuesday, but this next storm just off the map there, coming northward Tuesday night, and Kodiak and the Alaska Peninsula, you'll be back into it by Wednesday morning. And for temperatures this afternoon, upper 30s to mid 40s again for the Panhandle, with 39 at Juneau, 45 down at Ketchikan, while Yakutat had 38 degrees, 39 both at Middleton Island and Cordova. Right at the freeze mark there, Gulkana, 21 at Delta Junction, while Fairbanks had 3. And for Anchorage, 30 degrees, 27 at Talkeetna in the Susitna Valley, right around 0 here through the interior. Tanana 0, and then a little less than 0 across the Yukon Flats, with -2 at Fort Yukon. And 10 to 15 below for the most part along the Arctic coastal areas. Get up to 1 below at Cape Lisburne. 20 at Deering, 10 degrees Shishmaref, -1 with those gusty winds here through the Bering Strait. 5 at Gamble, 16 St. Mary's, 10 degrees warmer over at Bethel, 17 at McGrath. Sparravon up to 31, a little higher elevation there, indicating or signifying the warmer air aloft. 24 at St. Paul, just 21 at Adak this afternoon, while Unalaska pushed up to 37, 36 at Cold Bay, 40s along the remainder of the peninsula. 44 at Homer. For the lows tonight, mostly in the 30s here, so a pretty mild night under southerly wind flow and cloud cover. A lot of areas staying above freezing here to near 40 along the North Gulf Coast. Areas of upper 30s and 40s for the Panhandle. Below 0 as far as 25 to 35 below for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, and 20s here for much of the southwest areas, Kuskokwim, Yukon deltas, and then temperatures ranging from 7 below here at Gamble to 23 at St. Paul to 29 at Unalaska. And for the highs tomorrow, near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, mid to upper 30s, Bristol Bay, in across all areas here south of the Alaska Range, and then to the north, cooler to below 0, a little below 0 there for the Brooks Range, and about the same along the Arctic coast. No change over the Panhandle temperature-wise. For flying weather, IFR here over the southeast, the southern southeast coast. Again, that next wave coming northward, dropping the conditions down there. VFR up to the north to Yakutat, but a band just to the south of marginal VFR becomes IFR over Prince William Sound, and that extends down across Kodiak Island. And then with that east-southeast wind flow continuing, VFR from Kenai, Soldotna, up into Palmer, Anchorage, and much of the valley there, but IFR as you get up toward the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and that'll extend right down to the Aleutian Range, and then another swath of IFR here from the Kobuk Mountains northward to eastern Norton Sound, and of course out over the Bering Strait. Passes Anatuvik, VFR, either approach. Yadigan, same forecast. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR again, like today, lowest conditions, IFR on the eastern approaches, VFR off to the west. Same forecast for Rainy, that same pattern with the VFR on the western entrance, lowest conditions on the east side. Windy, VFR, could be occasionally, possibly some marginal stuff, mostly on the south entrance if it occurs at all. Otherwise looking pretty good. Both Isabel and Mentasta will be VFR tomorrow. Tanita, VFR, possibly becoming marginal at times. And again, on the east side, not a certainty, but it's pretty certain Portage will be IFR. Chilkoot and White go for marginal VFR at times. Freezing levels at the surface here, or late tonight, early tomorrow morning from roughly Cape Newenham across northern Cook Inlet, hugging the coastline there, and then warmer air aloft sliding north of that. So threat of some mixed precipitation or even some mixed icing here as far up as 2,000 feet there into the interior, and the warmest air though staying down just southwest of the Panhandle. Icing threats, again, moisture coming northward here. Could be some moderate rime icing over the southwest part of the state in this area, and then a band coming back and maybe some moderate stuff approaching and getting up toward the coastline here, the Panhandle, and then areas of back to the northwest, and maybe some moderate rime icing possible here over the Pribilof Islands. And looking at the winds aloft, strong jet again across the Pacific here, kind of meandering right in this area, and then splits right here at about 140 or 150 west, with one branch coming up southeasterly 70 to 80 knots, and an even stronger southerly winds max there coming into the Panhandle. At 9,000 feet, a little more organized here, southeast 40 to 55 knots, so pretty strong with this next low pulling northward into Bristol Bay, and 50 knot winds from the southeast and east there right across the Seward Peninsula, northwest 50 knots across the Pribilofs, heading in toward the eastern Aleutians, and some pretty brisk southerlies getting up in across Dixon Entrance, but light up over the eastern Arctic coast. And about the same thing at 3,000 feet, while at severe turbulence tomorrow with those gusty winds. Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, western Alaska Range, and the King Salmon area with moderate chop anywhere in the turquoise shaded areas. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Hello, my name is Don Lee, Chief Pilot of Talkeetna Air Service. Today we're going to go over some special ski operations up in the mountains, up in the base of Mount McKinley. We landed on the southeast fork of the Giltner Glacier. We'll be going over some points on your skis, maintenance, things to watch for in these winter conditions. Our skis really take a beating and we use them a lot, and these are things that we've just learned through the years, some special tips that might, I hope to help you folks watch for and to prevent any problems in the future. First, generally, I go around and I check anything outside, anything that looks different, anything loose hanging down or any cables. Later, we'll come back and do a more specific check on your skis. But on my initial pre-flight, I usually just walk by, give everything just a good shake, look for any wrinkles in the skin. Nobody's backed their car up into it or something overnight or anything else like that. Looking at the base of your landing gear, there's no wrinkles here, there's no loose hydraulic lines hanging down or no red stains on the ground or anything. Just a general check, everything looks straight all the way to your leading edge. No frost or ice chunks on the very leading edge or anything like that. Look for clean, smooth surfaces. Know if your fuel vent's open. Counterbalances are in, the hinges all have their pins, the push rod is there and loose. We'll come all the way to the flaps. Yeah, we're just checking the flaps for free, easy movement. Push rod is in good shape. Now I'll just go over some of the finer points on checking your ski rigging out. The skis, because of the snow conditions and hard runways and the abuse they take, sometimes they're neglected, and it's real important to check your rigging real close. And if your rigging is old or you don't know how long it's been since it's been replaced or the bolts, it's a good idea just to throw out the old and put new stuff on. It's a good safety factor that we do every 100 hours on our aircraft. Okay, you looked at your rigging is tight, that of course for any obvious missing bolts or anything like that, that your cable's in good shape, that it's not frayed. In this particular model, the cable works in this housing here. Your hydraulic lines are tight. There's no red stains on the snow or on the ground. Everything's tied up tight. You look, especially, there's 4 bolts in here on the Cessna model that's particular, that you want to be sure that there are no cracks that you can see from the outside, that there's no that the bolts are all on and that they're tight. And by wiggling the ski in the airplane, you can see that. There is a certain amount of play that has to be there. This arm has, whenever the airplane is in the snow, you have a tremendous leverage with the tail. And if you get 1 or 2 people pushing on it, you can oftentimes twist the ski because of the tremendous leverage moment on that. And you want to make sure your arm is in good shape, that it's not bent and that it's not cracked anywhere. Underneath, look, make sure that your plexiglass isn't wore away, that there's no jagged holes in it or spots, that your skegs are still in good shape. There's nothing obstructing the bottom. That your main rigging, that your spring is still has some spring left in it. Your cables are all hooked up. Then again, no frayed cables, or all the bolts are all tight and solid. This cable here also, that no frizzies. It's connected well. There's no sign of fatigue or anything like that. Okay, when you fill your airplane, especially in the winter, with nylon snowsuits and wool mixed, you have a high possibility of static electricity. And it's important to be sure, and if you don't have a physical ground wire to actually ground your aircraft, come and touch a metal point to block and ground any static electricity. One little thing to live by is know exactly what you got in the tanks. Not to just say your gauges. Man, oh man, you'll have a surprise someday. Okay, we're all set. Oil's okay, gas is sumped, hydraulic reservoir is full. Now that your pre-flight's complete, it's a good idea to go and get a weather briefing from your local flight service station. In this country, it's real important. How's it going, Dick?
Pretty good, Don. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, good. Heading up to the hill today, Southeast Fork. What do you got for weather up in that area?
Well, basically, we've got a pretty well entrenched high-pressure system over Siberia. It's keeping the lows pretty well south of us along the chain in the peninsula. We're probably in the fringe area up here of some middle and high clouds, 12,000 scattered with high thin cirrus. Lower clouds and possibly some light precipitation in the southern Susitna Valley, but I don't expect any up in the northern valley or along the range today.
Okay. All right, real good. Thanks, Dick, and we'll file a flight plan.
Welcome back. Look for southeast winds here just about the entire stretch of the coastline in the 20 to 30 knot range. Variable to east, 15 knots or 10 to 15 knots there. Could be some higher gusts over the inside waters. And for Tuesday, not a lot of change, a little more easterly and lighter down here along the south coast. Otherwise, small craft advisories along the remainder of the coastline, a little more easterly up here in the north. Pretty light winds over the northern inside waters, kind of a light variable wind condition there, and variable to east, 5 to 15 knots for the central and southern areas. And for, looks like full gales here for the western Gulf Coast through the Barren Islands up into Kamishak Bay, at least for a period of time tomorrow, dropping back to 20 to 25 knots Kodiak Island, and possibly as high as 35 knots northern Cook Inlet, but that's definitely a high-end forecast. And then dropping back, light variable winds, kind of the calm in between storms here for Tuesday, all the way down Cook Inlet, Shelikof Strait, all around Kodiak Island. A very light wind day coming up, but some small craft advisory winds holding on because of that stalled out frontal boundary here along the North Gulf Coast. And for the Bristol Bay zone, gales, southeast gales tomorrow, same thing southwest of Kodiak Island. Westerly winds 30 to 40 knots coming across the Alaska Peninsula. And then those drop off pretty good here for Tuesday, 10 to 15 knot breezes there for Bristol Bay, and about the same thing speed-wise here along the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Light winds southwest of Kodiak Island. Starting out light also here for the southern part of the peninsula, marine areas right through here. And then these coming up in the afternoon to 25 knots. For the Aleutians, south 20 knots to west 20 knots here for the central areas. Otherwise, northwest 15 to 25 knots on across the eastern areas. And then for Tuesday, pretty light variable winds back here over the central and western Aleutians with northwest 15 becoming northeast. Again, during the afternoon, these will swing around to the northeast, pick up 15 to 20, maybe 25 knots over toward Unalaska. And then for the Bering Sea, gales right out of the north tomorrow for the St. Lawrence Island. Northeast 25 here for Nunivak Island, lighter though down to the south, and northwest 40 for the Pribilofs. Looking at Tuesday's outlook, lighter winds across the area also. Still a little brisk here over the northern Bering Sea out of the southwest. And brisk wind advisories also here along the southwest coast. East at about 20 for St. Lawrence Island, west 20 for the Pribilofs. For the Arctic coast, east-northeasterlies 15 to 20 knots for the central and eastern zones. Brisk wind advisories here for the western zones to about Point Hope, and then the Chukchi Sea for the most part northeast around 20. And then those become east at 20 on Tuesday. Brisk wind advisories, the entire stretch of the central and eastern Arctic coast may drop back to 20 or 15 to 20 here on the east side, but looks like brisk wind advisories are pretty likely for the far eastern zone. And for tonight, again, this front coming northwestward with all the moisture hanging back in the west here or down to the south. And this won't be really heavy at all, just keeping the coastline wet. Occasional rain back into Kodiak Island. Windy conditions here right up into Bristol Bay. Gusts anywhere from 25 to as high as 50 miles per hour or more in isolated areas there. And a little wetter over the southeast coast than what you saw today, and fair up to the north. And this front really having a tough time leaving the south central Alaska area, extending to the northwest there. So winter storm watches are out for the Yukon Delta coast, as well as the mid-valley or lower valley area, and Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, and the Bering Strait. Another cold front here bringing some rain and snow showers into Bristol Bay, and those gusty winds in advance of that. More rain for Kodiak and wet conditions over the southern panhandle. And for Tuesday, drier conditions here. Less wind, could be a fair amount of sunshine actually from the eastern Aleutians on up to Kodiak Island. Snowy and windy in the west. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.